Good morning, pre-algebra students. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm having to quarantine. So I'll be gone a couple of days, hopefully back Thursday. But education must continue. So here it is. Lesson 5.5, which is I believe, the final lesson in our chapter. So we will start working towards the test after this. But this is part 1 of lesson 5.5. We're probably going to do this in at least 2 parts, probably 3 parts though, before we really, before I consider us done with this unit. So we've got a little work left to do still in the chapter. Today we're just going to focus on solving multi-step equations, and really just one particular type of multi-step equation. So the type of multi-step equation we're going to solve today will take us back into chapter 4 when we did the distributive property. So it's been a while since we've seen that. Hopefully you remember it. But here's just a quick review on the distributive property. And here we go. So this is 3 times 4x plus 2. And back then in chapter 4, we would write it out like this: 3 times 4x. Oops, already made a mistake. 3 times 4x plus 3 times 2. And then you multiply those two terms, and it is 12x plus 6. And since there's no equal sign here, we don't have anything to solve. This is just remembering how to do distributive property is all this slide is about. So we're not trying to figure out what x is. We're just simplifying these expressions. So next we would do this one: 5 times 2x minus 5 times 7. So that would be 5 times 2x is 10x, and then minus 5 times 7 is 35. 10x minus 35. We'll also have some distributive property where the number that we're multiplying by is negative, so we need to remember how that affects the things that we're multiplying. So this one would be negative 9 times 3x. And then we have a negative 9 times a positive 2. And so remember, that plus sign has to follow that 2 wherever it goes, and this minus sign has to follow the 9 wherever it goes. So that's the reason I wrote it that way. So negative 9 times 3x is negative 27x, and then a negative 9 times a positive 2 is a negative 18. And then this one, because you'll see something like this on your assignment today where there's just a negative symbol outside of the parentheses, you'd remember that if there's a negative symbol there and you don't see any number, there really is a 1 right there, right? That's a negative 1 times 4x and a negative 1 times minus 8 there. So we could even write it that way: negative 1 times 4x, and then a negative 1 times a negative or minus 8. So negative 1 times 4x would be negative 4x, and a minus times a minus is a plus. So negative 4x plus 8. Okay, so that really is just a quick review over distributive property, because we need that for all of the equations that we're going to solve today. All of the equations that we solve today will have one set of parentheses that we'll have to distribute before we can start the process of solving. So let's just jump into some examples of solving equations that use distributive property. So now notice this is very similar to what we just had on the last page, where we've got the distributive property here, but now we have an equal sign. So we have an equation, and we're going to find out what x equals at the end of the equation. So 3 times 2x, we got to show this step. This is showing your work, so don't leave this part out. And then plus 3 times 4, and it equals 42. So all I did was distribute that 3 there, and now we've multiplied out. 3 times 2x is 6x, plus 3 times 4 is 12. So now we just have a two-step equation to solve. Once we get that distribution worked out, Now we're back into the typical steps that we should remember on how to solve equations. So now we would subtract 12. 6x equals 30. And then divide by 6. So x is 5. All right. Next one here, we've got a -3 being distributed. So don't forget that you're multiplying by a negative. It'll change things. -3 times 6x, and then we'll have a -3 times that plus 8 equals 12. -3 times 6 rather is -18x, and then a -3 times a positive 12. What? -3 times a positive 8, sorry, is minus 24. Okay, and then it still equals 12. That side did not change. Okay, and then you would add 24 to both sides. Add 24. So -18x equals positive 36. Divide by -18. And x equals -2. Okay, so those are about the simplest type of distribution equations that we'll come across. Most of them on your assignment, I think, are going to look more like these, where you have, these are multi-step equations, so you have variables on both sides of the equation, as well as some distribution going on. So this one, distribute the 3 first, 3 times b, and then minus 3 times 3. And that equals 8b minus 24. So 3b minus 9 equals 8b minus 24. Now we have a multi-step equation. These are what we've been doing through the most of this chapter already, where we just have these variables on both sides. So we'll do these the same way I've been doing all of them. Start with the variable term first. Variable 3b and an 8b. So I'll look at those two terms first, ignore everything else. And which would I rather do? Would I rather subtract 3b or would I rather subtract 8b? Well, subtracting 3 is going to be easier. So we'll do minus 3b. So those cancel out. -9 equals 8b minus 3b is 5b minus 24. Now, add 24 to both sides. -9 plus 24 is 15. 15 equals 5b, so oops, divide by 5. And 3 is b. Okay, they can get even a little bit trickier than that one, because now we've got this distributive property is kind of tucked in the middle of the problem here. So this is the part that I have to deal with first. I can't do anything else until I've dealt with that middle part that has the parentheses. Remember, order of operations, parentheses have to come first. So got to deal with that first. So -5 just stays the same. Now I've got this this distribution going on here. So I have a +2 times a positive n, and then I have this +2 times this -2. That +2 has to distribute to both of those items in the parentheses. So I've got 2 times the n, and I've got 2 times the 2. So equals -39 plus 7n. -5. Now I'm just going to multiply this. That's all I'm going to do here on this step is multiply those two things as I wrote out from the distributive property. So +2 times n would be +2n. And then a +2 times a -2 would be a -4. And that equals negative 39 plus 7n. Now I have to do one more thing before I can start solving. I have these two terms here on the left side that are like terms. So negative 5 and a minus 4. A minus 5 minus 4 would be minus 9. Negative 9 plus 2n equals negative 39 plus 7n. So we had to do all that work just to get us to this point where we're used to working with these equations. This is what we're used to now, right here. So it took me several steps to get there before I could even be ready to start solving the equation. So now look at the variable terms. I have a 2n and a 7n. I would rather subtract 2n than subtract 7. So minus 2n. This will be negative 9 equals negative 39 plus 5n. Okay. Now I need to do something on this side. This side has two terms left on it, so I need to do something with the constant here. So plus 39 plus 39, negative 9 plus 39 would be 30. 30 equals 5n. Divide both sides by 5. So 6 equals n. You see all the steps it takes to solve these type of equations. These problems are getting longer than the problems we're used to dealing with. So you got to pay attention. Details matter on all these. Here, back to a couple of simpler ones, I think. We've got just the distribution on each side, and then we'll be able to start solving pretty quickly. So negative 24 minus 2r equals 5 times 4 plus 5 times 4r. So negative 24 minus 2n equals 20 plus 20r. So now I can start solving. So look at the two variable terms. Would I rather add 2n or subtract 20? Well, that's funny. I switched variables in between. Sorry, that should be an n, not an r, not an n. Oops. Not helpful when I do that. So those are r's. Sorry about that. All right, so would I rather subtract 20r or add 2r? Well, adding 2r is going to be way easier than subtracting 20. So add 2r. Those are gone. So negative 24 equals 20 plus 22r. Okay, now subtract 20. Negative 24 minus 20 would be negative 44 equals 22r. Last step is to divide by 22, so that'd be negative 2 equals r. Okay. Let's start with distributive property here. We're always going to distribute first. If you have the option of steps that you can take to start solving a problem, and there's parentheses, you always need to deal with parentheses first. Always distribute first. So negative 2p minus 16 equals 4 times p plus 4 times 2. Negative 2p minus 16 equals 4p plus 8. Would I rather add 2p or subtract 4p? I want to add 2 plus 2p. So that leaves me with negative 16 equals 6p plus 8. Now I can subtract 8. negative 24 equals 6p divided by 6, and negative 4 equals p. Okay, next page. We can do the distributive property here. This is like one of the sample ones I gave you at the very beginning where we talked about distributive property. There's a minus sign here, but really it's like distributing a -1. So we can think of it that way. 6 plus 2n equals -1 times -4, and then a -1 times a +6. So that would be 6 plus 2n equals -1 times negative, oops, I forgot the n there. Let me put that in. 4n, sorry about that. -1 times -4n would be +4n. And then a -1 times +6 would be -6. So now look at the variable terms. Do I want to subtract 2n or do I want to subtract 4n? I'll subtract 2. So 6 equals 2n minus 6. Now add 6 to both sides. So 12 equals 2n. Divide by 2. So 6 equals n. All right, we'll distribute the 2 here. So negative 22 minus 5b equals 2 times 5b plus 2 times 4. Negative 22 minus 5b equals 10b plus 8. All right. So now, would I rather add 5b or subtract 10b? Well, I believe I'll add 5. Negative 22 equals 15b plus 8. Then I can subtract 8. Negative 22 minus 8 is negative 30 equals 15b. Divide by 15, so negative 2 equals b. All right, we're almost done with the examples here. Last page. And these two are probably the trickiest ones that we have in the lesson, and then you'll have some like this on your assignment. So here we go. Good luck. Pay attention. 7v plus 40. Nothing changes on the left side because there's no parentheses or anything over here. And it equals, and the only thing I'm looking at right now is just this part. Whoops. This part. I didn't circle the plus sign with 4. So this part right here is all I'm worried about. So the negative 5v stays the same. Then I would distribute the plus 4. It gets multiplied by 4v. And then I would have a plus 4 times that plus 8. So 7v plus 40. Negative 5v, nothing changes with that. Now we multiply, so plus 16v. And then positive 4 times positive 8 would be positive 32. So now I have like terms on the right side here. I want to combine those two terms. Before I do anything else, I want to add those two together so that I don't have multiple terms on the same side that are alike. 7v plus 40. negative v, 5v plus 16v would be 11v plus 32. So now I look at my variable terms. We had to do all that work to get down to this point where I could start to solve it. So minus 7v, that'll be 40 equals 4v plus 32. Subtract 32. 40 minus 32 is 8 equals 4v. Divide by 4. So 2 equals v. All right, we're in the home stretch. Last problem here. This right here, this part of the equation is the only thing I'm going to look at first. Everything else stays the same. So negative 36. Divide these two pieces here. There we go. Negative 36 minus 7a equals negative 7 times 4a and a minus 7 times a plus 1. And then we still have this minus 8a at the end of the problem. Minus 8a. So negative 36 minus 7a equals negative 7 times 4 is negative 28a minus 7 minus 8a. So now we have like terms. This term has an a and this term has an a. So we want to combine those like terms on the right side before we do anything else. Negative 36 minus 7a equals negative 28 minus 8 would be negative 36a minus 7. Okay, so now I look at my variable terms. Do I want to add 7 or do I want to add 36? Well, if I add 7, adding 7 sounds easier, but if I add 7, it's going to still be a negative variable. I don't like negative variables, so I'm going to add 36. Add 36a. That'll make my variable a positive term. So I would have negative 36 and 20 or 7 negative 7a plus 36a would be plus 29a. Positive 29a. How can my 9 and my a look just alike? 9a equals, so those went away, so it equals negative 7. Now I want to add 36 to both sides. So 29a equals 29. Divide by 29, and a equals 1. All of that work to get down to the end, and a equals 1. Guys, that's it. That's what we're doing today. Equations with distributive property, variables on both sides, multi-step equations. So do your best. You know my rule about homework, no more than 30 minutes. If it takes you more than 30 minutes, put it away. We'll take care of it later. So you should have the rest of class time and then maybe some homework for tonight as well. Hopefully I'll see you back Thursday. You'll have some other type of recorded lesson again tomorrow with part 2 of what we're doing in this unit. So hope to see you guys soon.